Hey everybody, this is a tutorial for using the APA style, and I haven't actually done this before in my classes, but I know that sometimes students struggle with APA, and so I wanted to try to make this clear. And so I want to give some specific examples. You might want to watch this video more than once because there's going to be a lot of information, and it may be something that it takes a few times for you to pick up on APA style. And maybe you're even wondering, why is this even important? Why do we have to know how to do this? Well, I have a few reasons. They might not be enough to convince you, but it'll get on that track of heading in that direction. Think of APA style as kind of the manners of writing. And what I mean when I say that is we know that there are certain manners that we use in different situations. So if we're in a museum, we speak at a certain level. If we're at a ball game, we speak at a different level. When we're talking to a friend or talking to a colleague, we may use different type of language. So APA style is the language, essentially, of professional writing in education. It requires a very strong attention to detail, and that attention to detail is how we show respect to the work of other people. So it's really about knowing how to format something so it follows that same style so that other educators who read our work will understand the way that we're making a point in our work and where we're backing up our thoughts. So that's really what it's for. You may not still be convinced about its usefulness, but I will say it is something that you'll use in other courses in our master's program, and you may even use it in future professional writing. So here we go. You might still also be wondering, do my students need to know APA style? And I'm going to say probably not. Unless you teach upper level high school students, probably not. But the idea here is not necessarily that you're learning APA style so you can teach it to your students. It's that you're learning it for your professional writing in that context. Students write in a different context. Most of them are not at the level where they'd be expected to use APA style in the way that we're going to use it. But even very young children can begin to understand the idea of giving credit to someone else's work. So APA is basically a standard way of giving credit to someone else's work. What I'm going to explain to you is kind of I'm calling it a stair-step model. The gold standard is to use the APA style manual, which I showed you on the first slide. That's kind of like the rule book for APA style. Now, if you don't have that, I would encourage you to get it. You can get used copies. Just make sure that you get the 6th edition because that's the edition that we're on right now. Former editions will not help you at all because there have been changes. Now, if you don't have that book, visit the Purdue APA style website, which was back on that first slide also. The website is actually called OWL OWL, and that website is a reliable source for the 6th edition of the APA Style Manual. And then the third step, if you don't have either of those two things at your fingertips, sometimes I'll even do this myself. I'll find an article that's been published in a journal that I know is reputable and uses APA 6th edition, and I'll follow that as a model. So those are 3 places to go if you're unsure of what to do next. But you want to stick with those 3 places because a lot of the stuff online is not accurate, and that's going to get you into trouble. The key is to notice details, and what I mean by details are capital letters, commas, periods, italics, parentheses. All those things matter when it comes to APA style. We're going to focus on only 3 aspects of APA style. I only expect you to deal with these 3 aspects in your inquiry project that you're writing for this class. I'm not concerned about an abstract or running head, the cover page. I'm not worried about those things. If you can get these 3 things down, then you can figure out those other things. They're pretty easy. So we're going to talk about citing within the period or the body of a within the paragraph or the body of a text, or how to list a direct quote with a citation, and how to create a bibliography. So I'm going to head to an article that I have here. This is an article that I wrote. This is the last version before it was published. And I want to just take you through and give you some really specific examples. So the article itself is about reading digital textbooks, but that's not important. We're going to focus on citations. So first, let's start with citing within the text. So in this paragraph, you see a citation right here. That's the in-text citation. Now, I want you to notice some things about this. Notice that it's set in parentheses. There's not a comma before those parentheses. Notice that each of the author's last names are used, not their first name and not their first initial, only the last name when we're within the text. Notice there's the ampersand sign there for the set off the last, before the last author. And notice that there is a comma after that last author's name and then the year of the publication. So that's what you need for an in-text citation, those specific elements. You see below here, here are some others. If there's just a single author, just the author's last name and the comma, then the year. So when do you use these citations? That's the tricky part. And there's no easy answer here. You're wanting to give credit to an idea or an opinion. And so when you state something that isn't necessarily common knowledge, and we'll look at something in a minute that is, I would consider common knowledge, that isn't common knowledge, or it's a research study that someone else did and they found these results, that's when you need to include this in-text citation. Notice the Walling citation here. This time the name is embedded within the sentence. Previously, it was set off with parentheses, but when the name is embedded within the sentence, then the parentheses only go around the year. So if you're trying to be kind of conversational and use that person's name within what you're saying, that's when you use the name and only the year. So there's 3 examples here of in-text citations. Let's scroll down here a little bit more. Now back to this idea of when to use a citation. Common knowledge things don't necessarily have to be cited. So for instance, in this paragraph, you see an explanation of the different types of e-textbooks. Those explanations would be considered common knowledge, kind of out there for people to know. They don't necessarily require a citation. But when we get down to things that are more detailed or more factual, then you'll need that citation. Let's come down here to some statistics. Definitely, I'm going to keep scrolling here to get to my statistics. Here we go. Definitely, you need a citation when it comes to statistics. Absolutely, that's without a doubt. Notice here in my statistics paragraph, some of my citations have authors' names. Some of them do not have authors' names. And we'll see this later when we get to the bibliography. But the School Library Journal and the Scholastic, these are articles that are on a website. And so within the text, when you cite that website, you cite the host of the website. That's the citation that you use if there's no author's name. Now, a lot of times when you look at something on a website, you can't find out who wrote it. So if that's the case, then you use the host of the website and then the year. And we'll look in the bibliography to see how those are listed down below. I also wanted to show you, back up here, the Internet 2. This is actually a report. Sometimes we'll use a report if we're citing some statistics or some other factual information. And it also does not have an author. So that's the title of the report. And that's what we use when no author is available. We always want to start with the author. Okay, so we've seen examples of single author, double author within the text citations. We've seen the use of citations to back up statistics within the text. Now, let's look at a quotation within the text. So in this paragraph, we have the quotation right here. Now, anytime you use the exact words of another person, you must cite it. If you don't know the information to cite it, then you cannot use those exact words. And so when we cite the quotation, of course we use the quotation marks for a short quotation that's set right within the sentence. And I think a short quotation, I didn't look this up, but I think it's like 40 words or less. It's set right within the sentence. If it's a longer quotation, then you make it its own paragraph and separate it in that way. But a shorter quotation within the sentence, and notice here I have the author's last name, comma, year, comma, then the page number. You have to have that page number to be able to use the quote. Without it, you cannot use the exact quote. Now, one thing you want to be careful about is that in our class and in lots of other places, nowadays, work is run through anti-plagiarism software. So it isn't that you can just leave off the quotation marks if you don't know the page number, because when your project is run through that software, it will show that those words have been quoted. So you want to be sure that you're being really careful about using someone else's words. Every once in a while, you'll see more than one work used to cite an idea. And so when that's the case, both of these pieces of work go in the same parentheses and they have a semicolon to separate those, and they're listed alphabetically. Now, in your project, you may not run across that. You may not feel the need to use this more than one source for an idea, and that's perfectly fine, but I wanted you to see what that looked like. Okay, so we've done the in-text citations, we've done the quotations. Now let's look at the bibliography. So I'm going to scroll down here to the bibliography, and I picked out some that I wanted to be sure and show you. So, bibliography. Title is references, and it's listed alphabetically. That's important. Also notice that I'm indenting on the second line of my references. That's a little thing, but you should be aware of that. All right, I picked out a few that I want to point out. First of all, this is the reference for a book. So we start with the author's last name, comma, initials, parentheses, a year with a period after that parentheses. That's important. Then we have the book title. Now notice something about the title of this book. Not all of the words are capitalized. That's a characteristic of APA 6th edition. Only the first letter of the title or the first word after colon are capitalized. And that's true for books. It's also true for articles, and we'll get to those in just a minute. Also notice in this book that the title is in italics. That's going to be different when we get to articles. Notice the city of publication, colon, and then the publishing company. And you can shorten that. You don't have to include publishing company in that list right there. Okay, so that's a citing of a book. If it's more than one author, you're going to include a comma after this author, and then the next author, and then the next author. Always starting with the author's last name, comma, then their initials, and then comma, and then adding the next person. All right, let's look at an article next, and we'll come back to Carlson here in just a minute. This is a journal article. It's going to look a little different than a book. Let me point out those things. The first part is the same. Author's last name, comma, capital letter, period, parentheses, year, and then a period after the parentheses. Now, we start next with the title of the article. Again, notice the use of capital letters. Capital letter at the first, and a capital letter again after the colon. Other words on that title are not capitalized for the title of the article itself. After the title comes a period. Then you see the name of the journal. Now we're using capital letters to identify the name of that journal. So that's something to be aware of. Also notice there's a use of italics here with the name of the journal. Not the name of the article, but yes, the name of the journal. After the name of the journal, comma, then comes the edition, and then in parentheses comes the issue. Now here's a little thing that will set you apart from really good APA style knowledge. The addition is in italics. The issue is not in italics. So see if you can remember that. After the issue comes a comma and then the page numbers. Now, sometimes, notice on the page numbers, there's no P with a period or PG with a period when you're talking about an article. We'll see later when we get to an edited book, but with an article, no P or PG. The DOI, we're not going to worry about that. That's an indexing number that can help identify works and is optional. So we got enough to worry about here. Let's not worry about DOIs. If you want to add them, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. I won't worry too much about that. All right, journal article with more than one author. Notice the comma after the first author's initial, the and sign, second author, year. Notice again the title, not only the first word is capitalized. Notice the title of the journal, capitalized in italics, edition is in italics, issue is not, and then page numbers. So those are very similar. I want to show you a report. Previously, I showed you the report when it was cited within the text. Here's the report again. So the name, and this report comes from a website. So you have the host of the website, then the year with the period, then the name of the report. Now, if you are getting an article or a blog article, you would use that name here. And notice it is in italics here with only the first letter capitalized. And then in APA 6th edition, we use retrieved from, right here, that's a key. Sometimes people get that part mixed up. Retrieved from, and then you have the website URL. There's no date on a website or any kind of online resource in APA 6th edition. So you want to be careful about that. All right, I'm going to go back up here to Carlson that we skipped before, because Carlson is an article from a periodical. And in that case, you would include the date of the periodical. So that would be newspapers, magazines, something that's published daily or weekly or monthly, but it's not a journal. That's a more formal kind of publication. So for a periodical, that would be the correct way to list the date. For an article, probably a blog entry too would have this date on it because it would be considered an online periodical posting. All right, so hang with me. We got one more here. We're going to look at an edited book because sometimes you're just going to use part of a book, maybe a chapter. And so in an edited book, you'll have first the authors of the chapter. So we're talking about a book here where there's an editor or two that's picked out the chapters, but lots of other people have written chapters, and you're just going to use one of those chapters. So you'll want the author of the chapter, the author's names and the year, the title of the chapter, notice the use of capital letters. Now, this chapter is inside of another book, and you have to cite that book. So here's the correct way to do that. Using the word in, and then you list the then you list the editors of that book. I can't highlight and talk at the same time. And notice this time the editor's initials are before their last name. And you have EDS period within the parentheses, comma. And then you have the title of the book. Again, notice the use of capital letters at the beginning, after the colon. Notice the use of italics with the title of a book. This time, we do use the PP abbreviation for pages. I know it's confusing. There's no rhyme or reason. I can't explain why. That's just how it is. So, parentheses, PP, list the pages, and parentheses, period, the publication city, and the publishing company. Okay, so that gives you a pretty good overview of the things that I'm hoping you'll be doing in your assignments. So now you're ready to do the APA assignment that goes with this unit. And so you can head over to Canvas to that module. You are welcome when you do that assignment. You're welcome to come back to this video. You're welcome to use the Purdue website. Uh, if you have the APA manual, I strongly encourage you to use that. I would hesitate to have you use anything else that's online. You want to just be really careful about what you use because that's where we get a lot of confusion and mistakes. So also, as always, if you have questions, be sure to ask. Thanks. Bye-bye.